Hello and welcome back to the Championship Lowdown podcast. It has been a while, but we are finally back after our sort of little Christmas and New Year's break. And I am joined, of course, by Ollie. Welcome back to you as well, Ollie.
Thank you very much and Happy New Year to everybody.
Yes, Happy New Year to everyone. Hope you had a nice Christmas. Depending on what teams you support, that probably influenced it slightly. But we won't mess about. This is our preview for the upcoming week of fixtures. Obviously, we've missed a couple, as we said, Christmas and New Year sort of gets in the way, but we're back now, and we're going to start, Ollie, with a pretty big game, all things considered, a bit of a local rivalry, if you will. It's Birmingham versus Coventry. Obviously, we've got a lot to say about Birmingham, I imagine, with their sort of rut, if you want to call it, especially away from home. That won't be a factor in these games because they are at home against Coventry, who are, again, in a bit of a slump of their own. So what do we think about this one, Ollie?
Yeah, tough one to call, isn't it, really? Because they're both in, like you said, they're not in the best run of form, are they? Either of them. And Birmingham back at home at St Andrews. They need to start bringing that home form back, don't they? They've on the back of a couple of 1-1s at home, really. It seems to become a little bit of a habit for Birmingham now, and they certainly can't pick up points away from home. So the bread and butter is at St Andrews, so they need to start bringing that home form back again. It's a tricky one, obviously, up against top of the league Coventry, who are in a little bit of a rut, you'd say, really, given what their season had been like so far. Coventry have sort of hit the stumbling block a little bit, albeit they are still 8 points clear. I think it's a real hard one to call, this game, and it depends how either team line up. I know Coventry have got a lot of injuries and they're sort of looking a little bit threadbare. But Birmingham will fancy the chances. If they can get that home form back up and running and taking over again, I think it could be a really, really tough game for Coventry to go there and start their run of form back up again, if you like. Birmingham will fancy this one.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the last 7 games for both of these teams, Birmingham have won none of them. Coventry have won 2, and if you look at the 2 they won, it was 1-0 against Bristol City, which most argue they didn't deserve, and then 1-0 against Coventry, which 1-0 against Swansea, which I would argue they didn't deserve either. So they've struggled a lot, both of these teams, and this is especially Birmingham. This is a team that was hailed to be a playoff team, to finish top 6 comfortably, even pushing automatics. I think Chris on this podcast predicted them to finish second. And, they currently sit 17th in the Championship after 25 games. We're more than halfway through the season now, and they're sat in 17th, which cannot be a positive sign for anyone involved with the club. I think Chris Davies is going to have a few question marks over his head, and it's going to continue if this rut doesn't stop, especially at home, because away they've been terrible. But they always, again, a bit like Pompey last year, they relied on that home form so far to keep them in that sort of contention bracket, but not really picking it up at the minute at home either. As far as Coventry goes, they've sort of fallen off a bit in the last couple of weeks as well. The gap, luckily for them, doesn't close too much because Middlesbrough seem to also coincidentally have a bad result every time Coventry do. But I think my worry, and I said it, God, I can't remember how many months ago, that I wouldn't mind seeing it. I wouldn't be surprised if Ipswich end up winning this division. And, they're second now. They're getting closer and closer, only 8 points. And if their form continues and Coventry's doesn't, you can see they'll root in for Ipswich. So I'm intrigued because if they lose again, Coventry, to Birmingham side at home, which wouldn't be the most surprising of things, Ipswich could then close the gap down even more to about, I believe it'd be 5 points if Ipswich won and Coventry lost again. So at that point, Ollie, a team that we thought was unbeatable and was going to fly this league, all of a sudden might be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, the injuries have played a part, though, to Coventry. And like I said a couple of weeks ago, they've given themselves that buffer, haven't they, to be able to afford, to a point, this little blip in form, if you like. We would say the quality of the squad, they're gonna start winning games again. It's just a matter of when. It's just a real tricky time to go to Birmingham, obviously, given they haven't won a game in the last 6. So, and they're just not scoring goals. There's only Jay Stansfield scoring goals for Birmingham. So it's where does this win come from? Where do the results start coming from for Birmingham again? They really need to start helping out with the goals, don't they? It's like Jay Stansfield can't do it all on his own. He simply can't. The real worry for me about Coventry, and like you say about winning the league, is the fact that obviously Ipswich are on that run of form now. They've got a favourable tie against Portsmouth this weekend of Ipswich, and it's January, so the second in the league. The transfer window's open. Are Coventry going to lose some of their players? Some of the Premier League players, some of the Premier League teams who are sort of teetering and maybe going to look at Coventry and think, I tell you what, we could pick up a couple of players from Coventry and really show our Premier League sort of credentials and safety, if you like. I've seen Haji Wright's been rumoured to be linked with a move away this week, so that'll be an interesting one. See if they can fend off interest for Haji Wright. Rushworth obviously was rumoured to be going back to Brighton. I don't know if that'll happen, but yeah, it's an interesting one. It's an interesting time for Coventry. It'll depend if they can keep hold of this squad, especially given Ipswich's run of form. And I don't think it's a bad shout at all. I think Ipswich are well in there, and given that their run of form and the fact we're in January, like I've just alluded to, they're the ones to watch for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's with Coventry. I believe I was talking about Haji Wright following Burnley fan pages this week on Instagram, which is an interesting one. Wouldn't really understand that move.
Can't be much fun following a Burnley fan page, surely.
But obviously, a Premier League team, you sort of think they could do with a striker, so that would be interesting. I think Rushworth was very likely at one point to go back to Brighton. I don't know if that's still the case, but if it is, that's a huge blunder because he's one of the best keepers in the league. So losing him would be bad for them because there's been a few games I can remember this season where he's either won them the game or got them a point when they didn't really deserve it. So they'd be in trouble, I think, if they lost him. As far as Birmingham go, I just don't understand. I said at the time, I don't think the squad was as good as people thought it was when it came into this division, and it's proven that it wasn't. It's fine, it's an okay Championship squad, but for me, it wasn't a team that was going to challenge at the top end of the table. I think I'd put them in the playoffs because the hype was hard to ignore, and if they kept the form going, it would have been hard to not do it. But part of me, in sort of the back of my mind, was thinking, yeah, you know what, I don't think they will be in the playoffs because people like Jay Stansfield, the way he scores goals isn't necessarily sustainable all the time if you haven't got creativity, because a lot of them come within the box, which is from good crosses or whatever you have. And, when the wingers aren't necessarily on the top form, he's going to struggle to do that. So overall with this game, I think it's an opportunity for both sides to sort of put an end to a pretty poor run form, but especially Birmingham at home with their no win in the last 7 games, I want to say. They have to pick up at least a point. I think they probably take that as much as they want to win. You take a point against a team top of the table. But, with they're sat in 17th, I mean, they're below Swansea. We've been rubbish this year. So, just to put in the context.
I think that just shows you how competitive this division is, though. And just going back to the runs of form on these two sides, I know obviously you'd look at Coventry as slightly better run of form than what Birmingham have, but I'm not sure if both teams would take a draw here. I think Coventry would be quite happy to go to St Andrews and come away with a point.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's how this game's going to go as well. I wouldn't be surprised if that was how it ended. I just think two teams who are desperate not to lose will be a bit more conservative and just try not to lose and just make sure they get at least a point out of this game and keep it moving into a week where they have slightly better ties. Obviously, the FA Cup coming up as well. That's another opportunity with Birmingham away at Cambridge. You'd fancy them to go get a win there, and that's also another point where they can sort of regain form in an FA Cup game. So we'll see how that one goes.
Could be a confidence booster for their away form as well, obviously, if they do go to Cambridge and get results. So
absolutely, especially with them travelling. They're on the road 2 games after that as well. So 3 away games in a row. So it's going to be a huge test for them to try and turn that form around. But we'll move on to another big game, really, in terms of the team near the top. We have Middlesbrough versus Southampton. Now, Southampton is another weird one because when everyone thought they'd sort of pick up, they've now hit a bit of a wall and they've not won in their last 5. Put a bit of pressure on Tondereka. A lot of Southampton fans saying he's been figured out, which was my worry at the time. I think I mentioned it a few times, saying you've got to be careful when you hire the interim because they can look good for a short period of time. But if you're not careful, the wheels can fall off and, no wins in the last 5 games. You'd argue fairly highly that that's the wheels falling off a bit. But Middlesbrough as well, they've won none of their last 4, lost 3 of them, including, a loss to Derby, who they'd beaten just a month beforehand. Hull as well, losing.
Same with us. They absolutely battered us at the MKM, and then we went there the other week, and they could have been playing for 3 or 4 hours, and they wouldn't have scored.
Exactly. So it's interesting again with Kim Hellberg, with how hyped up he was at the start of the year. Have the wheels fallen off there, Ollie? It seems to be a bit of a new managers have come in and they look really good to begin with, and all of a sudden it's not so comfortable as it was.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they're falling out the top 2, aren't they? But it's going to be a tough one. Obviously, the run of form that Ipswich are on, which you've already spoken about. But yeah, I thought they were really poor. Certainly against us the other week at the Riverside, like I said, they were playing for absolutely ages, and they just didn't look like scoring. Yeah, I was really disappointed, given that obviously only a couple of weeks earlier they were probably the best team I've seen this season. So what's gone wrong up at the Riverside? It seems to be, it's a really strange one to see, because obviously in a month earlier they were playing some absolutely wonderful football. They were 4-0 up at half time against us, and then literally 3 weeks, a month after, I know December's full on. It can catch up with a lot of teams, and I wonder if Middlesbrough have been caught out by that the schedule in December, because they seem to look tired and they just couldn't put anything together against us. And obviously they back that up with the Derby defeat as well. So it's a real interesting one. It's sort of they're mirroring each other, aren't they, these two at the moment? Southampton went on that run of form where you thought have they really started to find their feet back in the Championship again now. But yeah, it's they've fallen away a little bit again, haven't they? Because they're like 6-7 points off the playoffs now, where only a few weeks ago they were looking like they were going to knock on the door of it. So yeah, another interesting tie. Two teams who need to sort of turn around what they're running form and see how it goes. But Adam Armstrong's key for me here. You've got a goal scorer in Southampton there in Adam Armstrong, sorry. And if they can base their play around him and get him ticking over and get him scoring goals and running their lines between them defenders, Middlesbrough are going to struggle to get their form up and running again, because I think Southampton might just well edge this one.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? As I said, as you said, very similar situations to having a new manager in, and then all of a sudden they look really good, and then now they're not so much. I saw some Hellberg out tweets from Middlesbrough after their defeat.
Crazy.
I was like, I think that seems a bit rash, considering he's only, I guess, a bad run of form. But it's going to happen in this division. You ain't going to win every week. So I get obviously falling out the top two is going to hurt. But for Borough, I worry because, you sort of see the FA Cup week next week as a confidence booster if you do come out of this with a loss. But they're away to Fulham. Whereas Southampton go away to Doncaster, you fancy them a lot more there than you would fancy Borough away at Fulham. So, and then, we're going away to West Brom and Stoke after that, and then hosting Preston. It's not an easy run of games for Borough at all. So, they need to pick up points against the teams that are struggling when they can. And this is an opportunity to end this run of form. But then the same can be said for Southampton. Tondereka has a point to prove after, just being labelled a sort of honeymoon spell for a while for Southampton in that sort of interim time in charge. And now all of a sudden, not so good. But I say again, it's hard on all the teams that we thought would do well at the minute in the last month, I'll say, have been all off it. Coventry are off it, Birmingham are off it, Southampton are off it, Middlesbrough are off it. There's plenty of teams like Watford, for example, who have got the most points in the league in the last 7 games. They're flying at the table. Ipswich second, Swansea third in the last 7 games of points. So it's interesting to see these two teams in the situations that they're in, but they both desperately need a win. And again, does it become a game like Coventry, Birmingham, where it just ends in a draw because neither team wants to lose?
That's it, isn't it? And it's something that Eckert's sort of alluded to this week in his press conference, when he said, if you draw a game in this division, teams are going to catch up with you. And he's absolutely spot on because of the competitive nature of the league. And you kind of think that this game, the way that both teams are going at the moment and their runs of form, they're probably going to go for a draw. And basically, if you set up for a draw in this division, you're going to get beat. You're going to get beat. And neither team can afford to go there and play cagey football because the other team have got the quality to turn them over. I just think it's a real tough weekend to call this. First 2 games we've picked here are really, really tough ones to call, especially after the like we've touched upon the schedule in December. It's so full on. I just think if they can bring that decent result away at Middlesbrough, which they could do, because obviously Middlesbrough's run of form at the moment isn't something to be desired. If Southampton can go there and get a result, obviously nicely leading into the January transfer window, Southampton could see themselves propelling themselves up the table. It's a really, really interesting league this season.
Yeah, I mean, Borough have been so good at home. They're 4th in the league at home form. Whereas you look at Southampton, they're down in 16th away from home. So if you look at that, you certainly wouldn't be nervous backing a Middlesbrough win. But it's just so hard to call with these teams in the form that they're in. I just don't know which way to look at this one. I just think both teams have a point to prove. I think Hellberg's slightly more than Eckert, because I feel like Southampton have probably accepted this isn't going to be the year they get promoted, albeit they are only 7 points off the playoffs, which in this league we know can change very, very quickly, and that can become 1 point or it can become 15 points if you're not careful. So I just think Borough need to win.
The real worry for Hellberg is the fact that he took over while they were second in the league, Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
Has that automatically piled the pressure on him to start delivering pretty much immediately? Because if they don't and they do start falling away, because like we've already said, they've fallen out of them top 2 places now. Pressure will be on Hellberg. You've already said that there's people asking for it. Hellberg out. What? It's absolutely crazy to even consider that. You've got to give him a chance. You've got to give him a chance to get moving.
I will say the pressure is on because although be it they're only 1 point off getting back in them automatics, they're 3 points out of falling out of the playoffs altogether. When you have Millwall sitting in the wings on 40 points in 7th, and Middlesbrough sat on 43 in 3rd, it's just as your closest league is. You know, them teams who are like 7 points outside the playoffs, for example, are 10 points outside the automatics now, which is ridiculous.
Amazing.
But yeah, I just think Hellberg has a point to prove, as you said, because if they don't maintain that second place sort of, or at least around the auto, because this, I did say at the time, I didn't think it was in a point when you're in a sort of title fight or automatic promotion fight. I just don't, when the managers who seem to need time to embed their system, you don't want to rush into them when you're in the position like they were. You go for someone a bit safer who's just going to get results and churn it out. So it was intriguing to see them go for it. It worked at the start, but obviously now it's a bit more concerning. And his time can be limited at Middlesbrough if he is not careful with the results, how they come. But
interesting, the last 2 games with these 2 sides has ended 1-1. So get your money on the draw.
I can't say I'd be surprised if it happened again. But we'll move on to, I'm sure, I don't know you'll be happy about this one, Ollie, because we're going to Hull. And you're home to, as I've mentioned already, the team to beat in the Championship at the minute. Watford, the best team in the league of the last 7 games, the most points collected in the last 7 games. They are on an absolute flyer at the minute under Javi Gracia. Hull, however, in a better run of form than probably when we last spoke. Had a very good spell that ended at home against Stoke on New Year's Day. Apart from that, some really nice wins against Middlesbrough away, beat West Brom and Millwall away as well. So not the worst run of form to go into this at all, but obviously a pretty daunting task for you when you're facing a Watford side who, as I said, have been pretty formidable in the last sort of month in the Championship.
It is, but we have only lost 1 in 6, so we're not out of form per se. It's just, I think if you'd have said to me at the start of the season, the amount of times I've said this so far is that we'd be sat 5th in January. We'd be sat 5th in January with a chance of playoffs while we're under an embargo, we're under restraints, we're under restrictions. I would have laughed in your face. At the start of the season, when I predicted us to finish 21st just to avoid relegation. I think we might avoid relegation this season. Just. But it's 4th against 5th. We're at home. We've got the fans behind us. We've got relative amount of confidence going in there. Was awful against Stoke. It's got to come down to scheduling again and tiredness because we were absolutely awful. But it is our annual defeat at home to Stoke. It happens every single year. It seemed like we can go to Stoke and get the win every year. So it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one. Really interesting game. Watford, got to give them credit. Got to give them credit because they're absolutely on fire. 4 wins in a row. Tom Ince rolling back the ears with a hat-trick last weekend. Yeah, really tough one to call this. Again, third game in a row where we're very evenly matched teams. There's going to be goals in it, isn't there? You'd think with every time that we play, you'd think there'd be goals. We've only conceded a couple of goals in the last 3 or 4, so which is not too bad to be fair. We seem to have tightened up, which is nice, but the goals have dried up a little bit. So we need to get that balance back again, and we need to start entertaining again. I think there's going to be goals in this one. It wouldn't surprise me if it's a really stupid, high-scoring game, something like 3-3 or something ridiculous like that.
To raise your point, not only is it one of the last 6, Watford have lost once since October 25th. So that is a hell of a run for them. For a team who, I think I said it every year with Watford, the talent's always there, but they never have the man to unlock it and send them into a playoff position. But this team certainly has a manager in Javi Gracia who's evidently getting the best out of this team. I think when you've got Imran Louza in this team, who's probably one of the best players in this entire division, full stop, it helps, especially in the midfield as well. That's where you want your best players, I think, because that's where you need the more technical players who are going to create. And 6 goals, 6 assists is not a bad return at all from a pretty natural centre midfielder. There's so much talent in this team. So even Tom Ince is eroding back the years with a hat trick against Birmingham. They've got so many outlets in this team to create and score goals. and they're just like the last few games, they've only conceded 1 in the last 4. You know, they're on
Yeah,
an
that's
absolute
crazy.
heater with their run at form. I mean, they're up to 4th. They're only 3 points outside the automatics now. So it's just
I've mentioned it the amount of times I've mentioned Watford being such a strange team to call. It seems at the minute the safe bet is to predict a Watford win. But the one to say about Imran Louza, apparently he's linked with a move away, isn't he? Everton sniffing around, obviously, with their injuries that they've got in the middle of the park at the moment. So it'd be
they
interesting
really
to keep hold of him.
can't say I'm surprised. I think the only thing that will help out their case, Watford, is I suppose Everton did recall Harrison Armstrong from his loan at Preston.
Yeah, that's true.
And he's obviously another very talented midfielder in this division, so that might keep them away. But at the same time, you know, you would sign a player like Louza with how good he's been for Watford in the last couple of years. But as far as Hull, I think injuries just continue to be the issue. I think the fact you're doing so well with how many injuries you keep having to deal with is unbelievable, to put it quite frankly. I think the job that Djurkovic is doing is going a bit under the radar, considering how bad your squad has been sort of decimated. You get McBurney back, you get Miller back, but all of a sudden there goes Joe Gelhardt. It's dread to think when Gelhardt comes back, who you're going to lose then? It'll be like...
Well, Balumi's gone for another 3 months, hasn't he? So
yeah.
It's so annoying. It's so annoying because, like I say, we've got that front 4 where you would think if you could get them 4 playing in McBurney, Miller, Gelhardt, and Balumi, if you had all 4 of those playing, you imagine the goals in that side. I don't think we've had it once this season where we've had all 4 of those playing. It's like you say, it's a crazy run of misfortune when we keep getting these injuries. We've lost Ryan Giles now for 3 or 4 weeks, who's been an absolute creative dynamo. And maybe that's sort of impacting on why our goals have dried up a little bit, because obviously we're losing that creative impact from Giles, who's been phenomenal. It's got to stop at some point. We need to keep that. We need to keep our squad fit. We give ourselves a real chance if we can keep that squad fit.
I didn't even know you'd lost Giles as well. I didn't want
to last 2 games he's been out, and he's probably going to be out for 3 or 4 weeks.
Yikes. Not ideal at all. But I think with this game, I think you just need to sort of impose on them at home. Make it a rowdy atmosphere, get behind the team, because it's going to be a challenge at the end of the day. This is the team to beat at the minute, and it's going to be hard to take down a Watford side who I think has a real shot, even automatics, with the way that they're playing. With the talent in this team, if they can keep the form going, I don't see any reason why they won't be at least in a playoff game when it comes to May. But same goes for Hull. You're 5th, you're in your same points as them, so there's no reason why you couldn't either. So it should be a very good game with 2 very good sides, which mean I now have said that it's going to end 0-0.
Do you know, given our injuries at the moment and the fact that Watford are on this good run of form, if you a 0-0 won't be a bad result for either team, I think.
I think you both take it. I think you especially would take it. Just ending Watford run of wins as well. They've been so difficult to not lose to, really, let alone beat.
Yeah.
So if you could just not lose, I think that would be the ideal situation. But we will find out how it will go in the next sort of coming days. We'll we'll do our review in a couple of days' time, and you'll be either very happy or very upset.
We'll see.
We will move on to Portsmouth versus Ipswich. Now, obviously, it's a bit all doom and gloom at Portsmouth at the minute. It's very much a contrasting end of the table for this game. Obviously, you have the Portsmouth side, who are having an absolute nightmare, coming off an absolute battering to Bristol City after a pretty good run of form, all things considered, leading up to that game. Not losing in 4, winning 2 of them games, but a huge loss to Bristol City all of a sudden puts them in 21st, only 1 point above the drop. Ipswich, however, as we've already mentioned, the second best team in the league on form at the minute. Only 1 loss since the end of November, which came against Leicester. Beating Coventry as well twice in the festive period has been huge for them to mount a sort of any chance of a comeback to catch the league leaders ultimately. And you have to say, Ollie, this is the perfect opportunity to maybe capitalise on another couple of drop points by Coventry by playing a team not in the best way after an absolute demolition job on New Year's Day.
Yeah, that's it. It's like you get the win against Charlton in an absolutely crazy game where there's 2 goals in the 96th and the 98th minute, and there's absolute scenes down at Fratton Park, and that's what they wanted. That's what they want to see down there at Fratton Park, don't they? I'd be stunned if they can replicate something like that against an Ipswich side who are absolutely, motoring nicely now, shall we say. Pompey, what on earth, man? I mean, to back that Charlton performance up with all that passion and the buzz around the place, to to then just roll over and get absolutely slapped from Bristol. I mean, don't get me wrong, Bristol City are a good side, aren't they? They're just outside the playoffs, as you've just touched upon. Decent side. But 5-0 after that character building win against Charlton, where you just think, oh, you could build on that now. We can really push on and maybe go to Bristol City and get a draw. Mate, abysmal from Pompey, that. Abysmal. And it really wouldn't surprise you, would it, to see Ipswich go there this weekend and back it up and take another 5?
No, it really wouldn't. And, as you said, I just don't know how you can back. It was very funny, though. We never lose at Fratton Park, transferring it out from Charlton.
You could not write it, could you? It's brilliant.
To bury it literally straight from kickoff. But, I just, I struggle to see any way Pompey win this game. What I will say is I've seen a lot of things about Mourinho should be sacked or whatever. I completely disagree. And it's on the basis of this squad is rubbish. It is absolutely awful in this division. I'm just looking through it now, like the predicted lineup they have. I mean, I'm looking at these players. I would class maybe 2 or 3 of these as like a decent championship level player.
Murphy's really good. Murphy's good. It's like, he's obviously a standout.
I believe he is out. I think that this was sort of the issue. He didn't play. They had Swift. He got. The defensive Schmid, who's been okay. Regan Paul's never been more than a sort of high-end League One defender. Shaughnessy, the same thing. I just don't see the quality in this team.
We've got George Hurst, haven't they? But is he on loan from Ipswich? So will he be able to play?
Is he? I didn't even know they had George.
Yeah.
Did they sign George Hurst?
Yeah.
When was that? Do you mean
Back end of the window? Sorry, mate. That's what I meant. Yeah.
I was going to say. I'm pretty sure George Hurst is.
I'm getting confused. You're all right.
They do have Connor Chaplin, but I believe he hasn't scored a goal. 1 goal contribution in his 23 appearances. I believe there were rumours he's coming back as well.
Right. Okay.
So, again, it wouldn't make a difference because he can't play this game anyway. But he's just on the bench and the players they're bringing on. I mean. Some of these players are just complete unknowns in the Championship, just academy players who shouldn't really be near these squads. But I just don't see the talent in this Pompey team at all. I think Mourinho is doing a stellar job, all things considered, for the squad that he's having to deal with. The fact they're not even in the relegation zone, for me, it should be an achievement. But obviously, you're going to have questions after a 5-0 defeat. Ipswich, they just look brilliant at the minute. As I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they went on to win the league. And you can sort of see why I think that, because they've been absolutely brilliant. And, they go now to Pompey, then they play Blackburn and then Bristol City. There should be 9 points for them there. And then all of a sudden, if Coventry keeps slipping up, there then becomes, squeaky bum time for Coventry at the top of the table, where they could really be in trouble. So
you were just talking about the squad differences, and you look at Ipswich's side in comparison, and there's just Premier League all over the place, isn't there? Absolute ridiculous embarrassment of riches what they've got. And if they can keep that squad together, building up nicely, like you said, currently sat in second in the league, and going to Fratton Park, will probably get another decent result there this weekend. The likes of George Hurst, obviously, and Philogene. Unbelievable. So I just like what Ipswich have got in the engine room. It just seems to be that so much good quality that just keep them ticking over, providing opportunities for these two, for these players to get on the end of and score goals. I mean, the Philogene's a joke. He's an absolute joke. He should be playing in the Premier League. If he can keep fit, he'll be England international in the future for me. He's an unbelievable player. Portsmouth they've really got to up their game if they're going to get anything out of this game. I can't see them getting anything out of this game. It sounds obvious, but Ipswich will go there 3, 4, maybe even 5.
I mean, I was just looking at Ipswich's predicted bench, right, for this game. I'm just looking at football, but looking at the predicted bench and the difference in these two benches. I mean, look, this is the bench that they're predicted Ipswich to have, right? Got Palmer for the keeper, would start for most teams in this division, realistically. Yep. Ashley Young, Ben Johnson, Jacob Greaves, Jack Taylor, Azon, Jack Clark, Casey McAteer, Wes Burns.
Madness.
I mean... Compared to Portsmouth,
they're all starting Championship players, aren't they?
Yeah, and you look at Portsmouth compared to like Bursick, Matthews, Farrell, Williams, Chaplin, Ume Chibuze, Blair, Yang, and Singer.
Pharrell Williams is on the bench for Pompey. That's good, isn't it? It's changed your career for him.
I don't recognise a lot of these names, to be honest. I do for very little reason. So yeah, I just don't see this not being a win for Ipswich. that's all I really have to add to this game. I would that should be enough to justify.
If Portsmouth get a result against Ipswich this weekend, then Happy New Year.
I mean, to be fair, with how this league's gone this year, it probably will happen because it's just been an absolute mess. But
surely not. It's got to be a banker, this one. It's got to be a banker.
If all normality prevails, this should be a pretty comfortable win for an Ipswich side who, I'm just looking at the team, it's just quality absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, you got Jack Clark coming off the bench. I mean, bloody hell. He would be, he's just ridiculous. So, yeah, for me, 100% going with a win for Ipswich away against Portsmouth. But we'll go now to a team I'm actually happy to speak about probably for the first time for a very long time anyway. Probably the first time this season I'm happy to speak about us, Ollie. Millwall versus Swansea. Obviously, I've mentioned two teams about being the top two teams in the league on form, but we are the third team in the league in the last 7 games on points picked up. We've won 5 out of our last 7. The other 2 losses were against Stoke, which I don't think we deserved it, and Coventry, where we definitely didn't deserve to lose. So, safe to say we've turned a corner under Vitor Matos. We've been so much better. Millwall, again, just being Millwall, pretty standard form, decent run of form. Then it comes to a bit of a halt with only 1 win in the last 6 games. So, another opportunity for us, I think, Ollie, to climb the table. A win here would put us on 35 points. Could potentially be only 5 points outside the playoffs if results went our way at the end of tomorrow's fixtures, which is, to me, is absolutely ridiculous to even fathom with how bad we were a couple of months ago.
Yeah, you've had a good run of form, haven't you? 5 wins in 7 for Swansea. Cracking return, given what you were going through. And you were looking at one point, you even mentioned that you were scared about a relegation fight, potentially even looking at a promotion charge now. That's the Championship all over, isn't it? Some cracking players in that Swansea side. They've gone back to playing the basics right. We spoke about it before, didn't we? You get your basics right, you tick over nicely, you make yourself hard to beat, you can pick off a goal, you'll win games. And that's what Swansea are doing now. And they're doing it well. Millwall, it always makes me laugh. I look at them in the league, and they're 7th in the league, and they've only just dropped outside the playoffs with a -5 goal difference. How does it happen?
It's the weekly comment on Millwall's goal difference.
It's so weird. It's such a strange side out of Millwall. Like, you'd expect the Den to be a horrible place to go to. It's a nasty place. It's physical. Could be a tough side. Could be a tough game for Swansea. But given their run of form, they're not going to be going down there and not feeling confident. So who knows? Will it continue? Swansea go down there and get another win?
I don't know. Is the honest answer. It's a notoriously not an easy place to go. And I think, with them, they're not winning a lot, but they're also not losing a lot. They seem to be drawing a lot of games. I can't be. We haven't lost any of our. Drawn any of our last 7. Sorry, which for us is a rarity. We normally draw quite a lot. So, but Matos has just been. He's just completely changed my outlook on this season. We've been so much better, and it's just the bare minimums. It was the fundamentals of just effort and looking bothered, and he's reinstilled that into these players. The big thing for me was the games we've won were the games we had to win. We beat Oxford twice. We beat Pompey. We beat Wrexham, and we beat West Brom. Especially the Oxford and Pompey wins. When you were in the situation that we were in at the time, you have to win them games, and he came out and he won them. I said you can forgive losses at Stoke and Coventry when we win the games that really matter in terms of getting out of trouble to begin with. And now that we have a bit of breathing room to the sort of bottom 3. I believe we're 8 points clear of them. We're 8 points off the playoffs. So we're very much smack bang in the middle again. You now have that breathing room to be a bit more open with what you do. So as I said, I still worry about the creativity in our team. I just think we're still struggling with that. It was evident when we didn't start Ethan Galbraith or Zan Vipotnik against West Brom. Especially when Galbraith came onto the pitch, he was a massive change, and he is by far, in my opinion, one of the best players in this division. He's unbelievable. I will also say as well, I've sort of teased it being like a top 3 goalkeeper. I firmly now believe Lawrence Figueroa is the best goalkeeper in this division. I really do. I mean, another unbelievable performance. I believe if you look at SofaScore, he had like a 9.9 rating against West Brom. Prevented like 2.8 expected goals.
Ahead of Rushworth and Johansson?
I would, at the minute, with the form he is in, he's genuinely unbeatable. We've kept, I believe, in our last 5-6 games, we've kept 3 clean sheets. We're on an absolute run at the minute. We're not conceding goals. We've only conceded 4 times in the last 7 games, which for us, I believe we conceded the most goals in the league in November to then come through December with that kind of run of form is unbelievable. So credit to Matos for the turnaround. He's made us so much harder to beat, which we were literally just getting run through. You look at like losing 4-1 to Ipswich, losing 3-0 to Bristol City. It was just easy and it was expected. But now it gives us a bit of optimism to look forward to it. But as far as Millwall goes, I think it's going to be a tough one. I think it's a very solid team and it's a hard place to go at the Den. But it's hard to back against us. I think, as you said, the creativity is an issue. But we're not letting teams score, and a Millwall team that isn't exactly prolific in front of goal. I wouldn't be surprised to get at least a point out of this one.
That's it. Millwall are one of them teams who they'll win 1-0 one week and then lose 2-0 the next. That's probably why they've got such a weird goal difference, isn't it? They're a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde side, aren't they? But obviously going to Southampton last week and getting that decent result and getting a decent draw down there, that'll set them in good stead. Going back home against the Swansea side who are on a nice sort of, they've turned a corner. Yeah, another tough game to call, this one, isn't it? Very two evenly matched sides on form, you'd say, at the moment. Swansea probably, like we've said already, aren't you, the third best team in the league on current form. Millwall are just notoriously hard to score against. You look at the stats of your last 5 games against Millwall, sorry. You've only conceded 1 goal in each of those games, so no more than 1 goal in those games, sorry. So it's writing on the wall, isn't it? It's not going to be a low-scoring affair. You'd expect it to be tight. You'd expect it to be physical. You'd expect Millwall to try and make them hard to beat, like they always do. But it wouldn't surprise me if this is another draw.
Yeah, I think they've drawn. I mean, if you look at our last 4 games, they've won 3 of the last 4 games against us 1-0, and the other one was 1-1. So it's notoriously not a very high scoring game.
Not many goals, yeah.
And what I will say is, if I've seen some rumours with us linked to Jezran Raksaki on loan as well, which for me would be pivotal because our wingers are definitely the weak point in this team, especially Ronaldo. I mean, how on earth he's managed to end up in the Championship, I have no idea. He is absolutely terrible.
We've got one in David Akintola, mate, and how he's a footballer is just beyond me. I can't get my head around it.
It just baffles me how these players are allowed to play in the Championship. But if we sign someone like Raksaki, I'll have a lot more confidence going into the back end of the season with a winger who can actually do something with the ball rather than just give it away every 3 seconds, because that has been our downfall. And a team that is so good out of possession, that's what Matos has installed. The pressing is unbelievable, and I think Oxford, we're one of the better teams that they've played this season. You've got to have the end product to go with it, and we're struggling to score goals because our wingers are terrible, and that is what Matos relied on at Maritimo, was his wingers were really good, and that's why they won games. So the fact we're still winning games with these wingers is something to behold, because if we do get a good winger in the window, we could be a serious problem, in my opinion, for that top end of the table. But for once, I'll actually have to stop me talking about Swansea from a happy perspective. Normally, I'm quick to move on because I can't be bothered to speak about them anymore. We move to our final game of the week, which we'll speak about, which is Leicester versus West Brom. Again, another, West Brom, obviously, I've just spoken about against us on New Year's Day. 1-0 loss there. Can't say they look like any threat to us at all, really, in that game. A few decent chances, but apart from that, nothing to write home about. Obviously, on a pretty bad run of form, all things considered. You look to Leicester again. It's just a weird team at the minute to call anything with this Leicester side. Well, 1 minute you think, yeah, they're much better. All of a sudden they're losing again. You think, oh, they should sack him. Still think they should get rid of Cifuentes. But, if they lose this, Ollie, is it finally time to get rid of Cifuentes?
Based on the fact that West Brom have lost their last 9 away games, if they go to Leicester and win, yes, they should sack Cifuentes. Losing 9 away games in a row is absolutely incredible for a team of West Brom's stature. I was reading earlier, it's their worst run of form since 1973. Which is incredible. Like you say, Leicester are so inconsistent, wildly inconsistent, if you like. They go from relegation form to promotion form, and they're well sat in the middle of the league for good reason. It is a Midlands derby, this one, if you like. Not much, but it is one. But Leicester have got the upper hand in this game. They've won 5 of the last 6 meetings between the two sides. You'd fancy Leicester with their home form to get a win, would you? I think I probably would. I don't know. It's hard, isn't it? Just because the run of form of West Brom, away run of form, is so bad. I know it'll have to end at some point, but can you see it ending at King Power?
Probably yes not. And no.
Yeah.
Problem is, I've said they should sack Cifuentes if they lose, and every time I've said that this season, they've won.
They win.
So that sort of plays a part in it for me. But again, it's impossible with Leicester because, as you said, 1 minute they're looking much better. All of a sudden, they're screwed and they were in trouble. So, I just don't understand. As far as West Brom, as you said, 9 away wins on the bounce. I can see how it's happened with how bad they were against us. Just terrible. And they've got to play us again in the Cup next Saturday. So I'm sure they're buzzing about the prospect of going to us twice in 10 days. But yeah, I just don't know if it'll end. I really struggle to see a way back in for them in this away form at Leicester with the team that has to win, really. As far as Cifuente's sake goes, if he wants to keep his job, he probably has to win this game. So when that sort of pressure is on him, he seems to do really well. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happens again. But as far as West Brom, I think Ryan Mason is in some serious bother. If this
we spoke about Mason, didn't we? About him being a sort of a what's the word I'm looking for? But like an experiment, if you like, because he's such a young manager, and they should stick with him. But they're in a really, really bad position at the moment. They're 18th in the league. 3 points ahead of Charlton, who are absolutely falling down this league table. Could they get dragged in? They could certainly get dragged in. There's no doubt about it. If the unthinkable happens and Pompey beat Ipswich and Blackburn get a result this weekend and Leicester do beat West Brom, they're right in the mix. They're right in the mix because Norwich have sort of started to get a couple of wins here and there as well, haven't they? Which there's teams down there who could pick points up and really drag West Brom into it. They need to be looking over their shoulder a little bit. I think they need to get this away form hoodoo off the back.
As I said, I'm all for giving these sort of young managers time, and you've got to be careful. But at the same time, if there's nothing to show that what he's doing now is going to make it better in the future, then at the end of the day, you can't take a risk of potentially being relegated.
That's it. Let's be fair. Experiments can fail. And
a team like West Brom cannot be playing in League One. It's as simple as that. You cannot be playing in League One as a team of West Brom stature. It's not a team that should be near League One. It should be a team that's notoriously linked with sort of yo-yo in between the Premier League and the Championship, which it was for a very good 5-6 years. They were just that yo-yo team that went up and down, up and down. So I don't see a way for Mason to keep his job if these results sustain themselves, because you have to pick up wins, especially away from home. Because as we said, in the theory is if you just win all your home games, then you'll be fine. But they're not even doing that.
And the games after this they've got Middlesbrough, they've got Norwich, who, like I said, have turned a corner a little bit. Derby away, Portsmouth away, which is obviously a different game this season. Stoke at home, Birmingham away, and then Coventry. So they've got a real tough run of games coming up. They need to start winning away pretty soon.
And that Norwich game as well could be massive if their form continues, because all of a sudden that becomes very, very sketchy for West Brom at the bottom end of the table. But just looking at their away form, it's just so bad. It's a loss to the 9. They're 21st in the league on away form. Only Birmingham, Sheffield Wednesday, and Portsmouth are worse away from home this season than West Brom.
We spoke about Birmingham away form already, and we've been, we sort of laughed at how bad they are away from home. But West Brom are right down there with them.
But at least Birmingham
must be a thing down there.
Yeah, Midlands teams are like winning away from home, apparently.
That's it.
But yeah, I guess we'll find out. You have to say both managers potentially in trouble with a loss in that one.
Big picture game.
We will have a little run through of the other results the other games for this week. So we'll start off with QPR vs Sheffield Wednesday. Obviously a QPR team again, very hard to predict up and down, but you have to say, Ollie, pretty much my prediction was right. Sheffield Wednesday didn't win a game for the rest of 2025 when I said it. I believe back at the end of October, start of November, they didn't win another game in 2025. Got a feeling that's going to continue in this one.
They should have won a game just for interest's sake. They should have beat Hull City because we were horrendous against Sheffield Wednesday. The fact that we got a draw out of that game is a miracle, shall we say? But they didn't. So your prediction was right. They're not going to get anything at Loftus Road. Not for me. I think QPR will come away with a win there. They're comfortably sat in mid-table. They're difficult to call games generally. Sheffield Wednesday are going week to week to try and play with character and grit and determination, but it can only get you so far. They've got kids playing for their team, QPR win.
I will say my only thing to add to this game is although they haven't won in the last 18 games, Sheffield Wednesday, they haven't lost to QPR in the last 5 meetings, which is an interesting stat.
Something to go on for them then.
So they have got something to cling on to there. They haven't lost. They don't tend to lose against QPR very much. So that'll be an intriguing one. But yeah, I would be surprised if that doesn't end in a win for QPR. I was going to say Sheffield Wednesday then. I'd be surprised if it ended in a win for Sheffield Wednesday. Sheffield United versus Oxford will go to the other side of Sheffield here against an Oxford side, again, not in a good way, struggling at the bottom, only won one of the last 5, lost the rest of them. Also, the 2 big losses came against us as well. Struggling to beat the teams around them. I believe they are the worst team in the league for the team results for the teams in that sort of relegation battle. Sheffield United, though, definitely turned a corner. They're flying up the table now. And I think, Ollie, think that should continue in this one.
I think so with this game. After this one, they're on a tough run of games. Got Charlton away, obviously, we spoke about a little bit where they're falling away. But after that, then they've got Southampton away, Ipswich at home, Millwall away, and then Middlesbrough at home. So it's a tough run of games for Sheffield United. If they can pull a run of form together and get a couple of wins out of those games, have they got an outside chance of playoffs?
I believe if you look at the odds for them to get playoffs, it is actually like one of the lowest. Like you wouldn't win much money if you put it on, which is interesting.
It doesn't surprise me. The quality they've got in the squads, they shouldn't be down. Them and Southampton are very, very similar positions, aren't they? Yeah. You'd expect both of them to be higher up the league than they are. Very similar in points as well. There's an outside chance for a playoff spot there, especially with Wilder getting and playing like they can. And Chris Wilder teams are notoriously horrible to play against. I don't know if I would back against the Sheffield United playoff shot.
No, I really wouldn't want to back against it either, to be honest. They've been on a much better run of form, and look, compared to Southampton, who've struggled a bit, they've seemed to have built on it and carried on the form. So I wouldn't be surprised if they end up at least in the conversation for the playoffs in a couple of weeks' time.
Like I said, they play each other on the 21st of January, so it'll be an interesting game, that one.
Absolutely. We then go a bit further down the table for 19th versus 20th. 2 teams in pretty much the exact same run of form. 2 draws, 2 losses, and 1 win in the last 5. Blackburn versus Charlton. Blackburn notoriously been impossible to predict this year. Everything they're going to lose, they win. Everything they're going to win, they lose. So it's impossible. Charlton just fallen off a cliff since their unbelievable start to the year. Just nowhere near the levels. Their only win came against Oxford in their last sort of God knows how many games. Since the 4th of November, their only win has come against Oxford. So, it's been a tough run for them. And I think, Ollie, against Blackburn, they could maybe get a draw.
It's a tough one to call, isn't it? 19th, 20th, very similar positions. Poor run of form for Charlton. Like you said, they started off the season with so much promise and so much... they were promising so much, and you were thinking that they've hit the ground running when it comes to the Championship. But I said at the start of the season that I think they might have come up a season too early, and it may be starting to come true.
Yeah, I think they're always going to struggle. As I said, Nathan Jones is trying to make them a hard team to beat, which they were for a while, but they sort of got figured out very quickly, and all of a sudden they've started toppling down the table. Blackburn, on the other hand, again, every time you think they're coming out of it, they go back into their rut, and it's bad again. Not terrible results against Middlesbrough where you get a point, but then drawing 0-0 to Sheffield Wednesday, a team we've just been losing all the time at the minute. I couldn't even score a goal against them. So it'll be intriguing. I don't think it'll be a high quality game at all. I think both teams are struggling. I think it's going to be a pretty terrible game, but I wouldn't be surprised if Blackburn came away with 3 points in that one, if I had to pick anyone.
I agree.
Bristol City versus Preston. Obviously, 2 teams near the sort of playoffs. Preston in the playoffs in 6th, Bristol City in 8th. So definitely a big game for both sides. It'll be a tough test for Preston to go away to Ashton Gate. But with Preston only 1 loss in the last 5, Bristol City only 2 in the last 5, winning 3. They're both in pretty okay run of forms, Ollie. So it's going to be a pretty important game for both of these sides.
Yeah, like you said, very similar sides, these 2. Bristol City probably edging it in terms of the way the form is at the moment, you would say. Especially on the back of that 5-0 win. Got draw written all over this one, hasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, fair play to Bristol City. They've kept going from last year where everyone said, it's going to be a one-season wonder. They'll fall off a cliff next year. They're still pushing around them playoff spots that they finished in last year. But Preston, again, they're just so hard to beat. They may not win many games, but they don't lose many either. They've only lost once since sort of end of November. So, as much as they have only won like 3 times as well, they've just draw a lot. So, safe to say, with Preston drawing a lot and being hard to beat, going to a side that's also not exactly easy to beat Ashton Gate either. I think a draw is a safe bet there. Derby versus Wrexham, probably unlucky to miss out on our 6 featured games this one. Obviously, a sort of big game for both sides. Wrexham on a bit of a run of form, somehow, probably the worst team to come to Swansea all season. And as you said, probably one of the worst teams to play a whole this season. But they're now only a couple of points outside the playoff spots. with a nice run of form, including a 5-3 classic with Sheffield United just a couple of weeks ago. So Derby again, 11th, 10th versus 11th, this team. So both teams sort of in that playoff picture still, Ollie. So a pretty big game, all things considered, for Derby as well, coming off that win against Middlesbrough. They'll be high on confidence.
Absolutely, yeah. Couple of teams on decent form, like I say, Wrexham free on the spin in the Championship. You've got to give Parkinson credit, haven't you, for what he's doing at Wrexham? I mean, I know they've had the money, they've got the money, and they've got the squad, but they're nicely positioned in 10th at the moment. Only 5 points, not 3 points outside of the playoffs. Incredible run of form for Wrexham, really. Tough game for them this weekend, I think. You know, Derby, decent side, score some decent goals. Yeah, it's a tough one though, isn't it? There seems to be a lot of games this week where the teams in the league are playing each other around the same position as each other. So a real tough one to call. Again, wouldn't surprise me if it's a draw. I think Wrexham might edge it in terms of quality and chances. If any team are going to win this, I think Wrexham might edge it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I've got a little fun fact as well. Wrexham have been awarded the most penalties in the league this season, and Derby have conceded the most. So if anyone wants to eye up a little penalty shout in this game, don't be surprised. But yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think quality, there's more in this Wrexham side than there is in the Derby side, especially with all the injuries that Derby are facing at the minute. So it'd be a tough game, especially away at Pride Park. I'm sure it'll be a packed out Pride Park, and it'll be difficult for Wrexham, but with the form that they're in, somehow I don't get it because they were so bad against us. But you have to say they're probably looking like they're going to come out with another win here, and it's going to all of a sudden they could be in the playoffs by the end of the day if all things went their way, which is ridiculous. Yeah. Ridiculous to say. But the last game we have for you is Norwich versus Stoke, I believe. I think I haven't missed any there because Leicester is the Monday night game, so we haven't missed the Monday night game again. Norwich versus Stoke, as he said, Norwich have turned a bit of a corner in their form under their new management of Philippe Clement. Much better. Only one loss in the last 4 games, propelling them now to just 1 point, I believe, outside of being safe for now in the Championship. Stoke, on the other hand, again, not the best run of form. Only 2 wins in the last 5 coming against, but ironically, Ollie, Swansea and Hull. So safe to say we're a bit of a charity to Stoke in the last couple of weeks to end their pretty terrible run of form, all things considered.
They were awful against us as well, and we actually got 17 minutes added on in that game against Stoke at the MKM at the weekend. But it is an annual defeat to Stoke. No, it's a strange side. I mean, when we played them at the 365 earlier in the season, I saw somebody on Twitter saying before we played, mind the gap. I'll just reverse that now. Mind the gap. I think Norwich beat Stoke this weekend. Norwich have got a decent run of form at the moment. They've turned a corner a little bit, and Stoke were awful. So I fancy Stoke to get beat at Carrow Road.
Well, I'll back you up with a little stat here as well. Norwich have been beaten their last 10 matches against Stoke, with winning 6 and drawing 4.
Well, there you go.
So again, I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't be surprised for a Stoke side who have been struggling in the last couple of weeks or months. You could even say now with the struggles, it's not really ended for them.
They're just boring, aren't they? 30 goals for and 23 against. They're just not much fun, are they?
No. Is Stoke ever fun, really?
No, they're not. They're not. This isn't a Stoke. We hate Stoke podcast, by the way. We just don't find you very interesting. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they probably agree they're not the most exciting teams. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Norwich got this one. But I said, well, if Stoke win, without surprising me either, not at all. On all logic, they should win. But with stats in Norwich's favour and form certainly in Norwich's favour, it could be an interesting test for Stoke, especially away at Carrow Road, where now they're actually winning games. If we had spoke about this just a couple of months ago, it would have been bloody hell. This is going to be rough. So
and we'll be massively in for it as well if Stoke get a result here as well. Bring it on.
Yeah, definitely. But that is all we have for you for this week's preview of the Championship upcoming game week. Thank you very much to Ollie for joining me as always, and we will see you all for our review in the coming days.